welcome to the Real Men of Real Estate Radio Show here on KCAA Radio. This is Patrick Franz, the Note Mentor. I'm your host, of course, and I'm going to be bringing a guest on today. His name is Nathan Turner, but he goes by the Canadian Note Guy. And so you're going to want to listen in and hear his story and why he believes note investing is the hot ticket, and his successes, maybe some failures even, and what he's doing now to expand his note investing business and create more cash flow and more freedom. But everybody knows that on my show, the goal is to bring on amazing guest speakers. Reason being, I want the listeners to get a really well-rounded education when it comes to note investing, because perhaps you as a listener can use note investing to change your financial future for the better, create cash flow, a better retirement, leave a better legacy. And that's the hope. And that's why I do this radio show. Y'all know financial intelligence is what I preach, but note investing is what I teach, right? So we're going to get right into understanding, guys, that this show is designed for informational purposes only. Myself and my guests, we're giving opinions and we're sharing our experiences, but provided with the understanding that we're not rendering any legal or accounting or investing advice. If legal or tax, investing advice, or any other expert assistance is required, we recommend getting the service of a true professional. And the strategies we're going to talk about, they may not be suitable for everyone's situation, right? And so make sure if you're getting into note investing, you get educated, you get the right legal advice, and you make sure you're doing things the right way, right? So Nate, let me ask you a question. Nathan Turner, can you just introduce yourself to the listeners? Who's Nathan Turner and what the heck is the Canadian Note Guy?
Yeah, for sure. Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity. So I, the Canadian Note Guy, because I live up in Canada. So I live, currently I live in Montreal, Canada. Actually this summer I'm moving and we're going out to Alberta, Canada, which is where I grew up. So excited about all that coming up. However, my journey into notes, like most people that get into notes, I came from a real estate background. So I started flipping properties also in Canada from across the country back in 2005 and 6. And that was kind of my introduction to real estate. And then, you know, it's interesting how things just kind of progress and, you know, a little here, a little there. And as I continued on in my real estate career, I got into an opportunity where I could take over somebody else's portfolio, and I just had carte blanche. And they said, you know, we don't know what we're doing with this stuff. They were a bunch of people living out in California. They owned a portfolio of properties out in the Midwest, and their intention was never to own it. They wanted just to flip it back out, and that didn't work. So in the fall of 2008, when everything had gone haywire, they were stuck. So I jumped on board and said, sure. Kind of thought, me and my old partner thought we had invented seller financing, where we thought this was, what a great idea. We'll sell houses on terms. And we thought that was a brand new idea. Of course, it's not. And the more research I did, the more I found out, oh, this is an existing business. So then I learned how to actually do it. And then that kind of continued on, a little more education, a little more experience. That turned into non-performing notes that I started purchasing in 2010. And I've fallen in love with it. And I think, you know, we talked about this before, we need to maybe back up a little bit and talk about what that is and what that means and why I think it's the greatest thing ever.
Yeah. You know, I mean, there's some people I'm sure that kind of sort of know what we're talking about. I've done 6 or so radio shows now. So if people have listened to my radio show, they kind of get it. But, you know, there's going to be people listening in to this show, and we're going to be talking about some really neat things here in this show. But the neat things we're going to talk about, we don't want them to be over your head if you're a listener, right? So let's explain to them, Nate, what is a mortgage note?
So most people have experience with mortgage notes being on the purchasing side. So when you go to buy a house, you probably don't have enough money just to pay cash for the house you're going to live in. You have to go to the bank and say, hey, I want to buy this house. I'm going to pay this much. I've got this much for a down payment. And then I need you to lend me the rest in the form of a mortgage. And so that's exactly what we're talking about. So the bank says, all right, we will give you this amount, X amount for your mortgage to buy that property. And then where we come in is somewhere down the line, we are actually purchasing that contract. So the mortgage. So instead of buying the property, we're just buying the paper, just that mortgage document that says I owe the bank X amount of dollars. And then we step in as the role of the bank to be the person who's owed the money. So we don't actually own the property, which I think is awesome. It's so much fun not owning the property and just having the paper behind it.
Isn't that cool? Right. And going back to that, it's guys, if you go buy a house and you have enough cash to buy the place, right, you're going to hand over the cash. They're going to hand you the set of keys, I hope, but also a document that transfers the ownership of the physical property. That's a deed, right? So if you buy a house cash, they're going to sign the deed of the house over to you. You own it. They give you the keys. Deal's done. All good. Okay. Most people, like you said, just don't have enough money to go out, especially today's market, right, to go out and buy a home with straight cash. And so, of course, you're going to come up with like a small deposit and such, but you're going to get a mortgage loan to be able to buy the house, and you're going to owe the bank some money on terms, right? Well, when we talk about notes, or what is a note, right? A note is simply that written IOU, right? It's a promise to pay money back that you've borrowed. And usually a lender, of course, based on that note, is going to describe in the language of the note what those terms are and how that money is to be paid back. So it's going to list what interest rate they want to make off of you, when the payment's due on the 3rd or the 15th of every month. If you're more than 15 days late, they slap a late fee on there. And we all know what happens if we just don't pay on our mortgage loan, right? So that's the beauty of becoming a note investor, is that we can go to banks and hedge funds and private sellers and people in the business, and you can actually buy one of these mortgage notes rather than purchase, say, a rental property. It's an easy comparison, usual comparison. When you buy a rental property, you're going to go buy a physical piece of real estate and stick a renter in there, right? You're going to collect rent every month. And hopefully there's a spread or a little bit of arbitrage between what you owe on the mortgage payment that you bought the house and what they're paying for rent. And you get a little monthly cash flow, right? That's a great plan. And a lot of people have acquired tons and tons of wealth that way, right? But I always look and I say, hey, Nathan, but big banks have the biggest buildings in all the cities downtown, glass, logo. Their banks have been the best at making money for years and years, right? But they don't own any rental properties and they don't flip any houses. What's going on here?
Right.
What's your take on
something
that?
figured out? So again, my real estate background, I ended up being a landlord, not intentionally, but I ended up being a landlord once. And I did not like it. I really did not like it. What I did like was the cash flow. The cash flow was great, and I loved getting that the mailbox money, that check in the mail that says, the person paid, and this is what you get to keep after the property manager took his piece, and that's fine, and that's great, and I love the cash flow. But then there was everything that went along with that, and every time somebody left, then it was on the other side of the country, and it was cheaper for me to get on a plane, fly out there, repaint it, fix the floors, fix the toilets, fix all the stuff that got broken, because the person living there doesn't care because it's not their house. And I had to do that 2 or 3 times. I owned it for about maybe 2 or 3 years. And probably once a year, I had to go out there and fly out myself with tools in a suitcase and fix the house, because it was just so much cheaper to do that. And obviously my time is worth something, but at that time, that was worth it to me. And so that's what I ended up doing. What a headache. And it was just, I didn't like that at all. And it was just a pain. So that's my frustration with the rental property. I love the cash flow, but I hate taking care of the property and all the headaches that go along with it.
Yeah, right. We're talking about time. Right. We talk about owning assets and stuff, cash flow producing assets, and buy assets, not liability. Well, the biggest asset we have, folks, is the short time we've got here on Earth. Right. And so your time involvement, and also just stress and headaches included, come with rental properties. And I know a lot of landlords say, man, you guys are crazy. I got 9 rental properties. All my renters are perfect. I made tons of money. I don't know what you guys are talking about. But listen, the majority of the time involved in managing your property manager, right? The phone calls, the approvals through your manager of the plumber's got to go out there. It's going to cost $380. Do you approve this or not? They got a leaky faucet, all this stuff. And it's called headaches, It's time involved and headaches, right? And so imagine this, folks. Instead of buying a rental property and putting a renter in there and collecting rent with all the liability and all the headaches involved of being a landlord and having the liability of the physical property on your hands, right? Imagine becoming the bank, right? Imagine you take over one of these mortgage notes, and here's what happens. You collect monthly cash flow, like we love. You collect monthly cash flow every month from real estate without owning the real estate. Is that correct, Nathan?
It's the best thing ever.
And I've heard this statement floating around, right? And they say the wealthy people, right? The wealthy people. And they say those wealthy people, they know how to own nothing but control everything. And you hear that, right? And you go, well, they're not out there running. Real wealthy people and big banks and fund managers, they're not running around flipping houses and flying with suitcases of tools over to a different state to fix moldings. They're just not doing this, guys. But somehow they've been the best at making money for years. So if you can become the bank and you can own a mortgage, own a note, and collect monthly cash flow from real estate without the headaches, that's why we love it, right, Nathan? That's why we gravitate towards it, and we've created full-time careers out of this, right?
Yeah. When's the last time you called the bank to come fix your roof?
Crazy. And
Never.
Gosh, I'm thinking the fever's on right now with this real estate market, right? And so you're hearing, especially out here in the United States, oh boy, California, these places, people are paying like 20% over market value for a place, right? And one of the things that's cool about notes is that you can sometimes end up owning property. If you want to own rentals and stuff or flip a house, you can end up taking back some property or getting back some property by being a note owner. But here's the funny thing. Are we paying 30 cents over the value of the property when we buy a note? We're not, are we?
No, maybe, 30 or better off.
Yeah.
It's the other direction where we're getting it under market value.
So then I go to people who are big time into real estate right now and say, can you imagine right now if you could buy your next rental property at 30% less than what fair market value is today? And they look at me like, what are you, nuts? And I go, no, we're in the note game. It's just a different game, right? And so we're going to talk to you guys more right after this first commercial break. And we're going to let Nate tell us all about note investing, get into some specifics, and then tell us what he's doing with his new fund. So don't go anywhere, folks. You don't want to miss Nathan Turner, the Canadian note guy, right here on KCAA. We'll see you in a moment.